This video is sponsored by viewers like you. If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing at bentibbets.net. Thanks very much for your support. Hey there, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. This is a run-through and a little bit of a dissection of an arrangement of Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy. So Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy comes from The Nutcracker by Tchaikovsky, and this arrangement is by Anne Christopherson. And the music is supplied by musicscores.com, music-scores.com. So I thought I'd start by running through this arrangement and then probably break it down section by section to see what can be learned from it and how to better play it on the piano. Here's a run through. So this is a charming, effective little arrangement of an orchestral piece. I think it works pretty well, but it's also more difficult to play than it appears. Let's break it down. So this piece is in E minor. Which tells us that all Fs are sharp. The opening begins with a left hand on a drone of E natural. And already you can tell this E minor key signature is not that helpful because this music is really chromatic. It has a lot of sharps. And in some cases, at least as written here, flats as well. So the main theme, such as it is, starts at measure 5. As I play this, I'm looking down at my left hand because although it begins simply, the gaps between the chords at the top of the hand and the E drone at the bottom of the hand just gets wider and wider. And so if you're not comfortable finding those intervals quickly, then you need to look down and see where you're putting your hand. Similarly, the notes in the right hand are not intuitive. That's not to say they're wrong or bad. I think this is pretty close to the original Tchaikovsky. It's just this music is kind of angular, and it inhabits the black notes and white notes quite equally. That's what I meant when I said it was very chromatic. So although it sounds sparse and simple, that doesn't make it easy. All right, then we get a hop down in the left hand on the pickup to measure 9. This is not an easy figure either. It's a 5-finger scale, but it ends on a black note, which means it probably shouldn't be played with a 5. It should probably be played with something more like a 3. So let's try that and continue. This part is even harder because we start with a very big gap, a very big leap in the left hand. And the right hand is even less predictable than it was before. It's hopping around itself. So what I would do is I would look down as much as you can to find these notes on the keys, or over time develop your proprioception so you can find these notes without looking down. Of course, that's ideal. If you can play for sight reading without looking down, that makes the sight reading part easier, but of course it makes the playing part harder. Okay, let's do that section one more time. A 5-finger scale down to E, a minor 5-finger scale. And now this part, thankfully, is the same as the first part. It's exactly the same, actually. Measures 13, 14, 15, and 16 are exactly the same as measures 5, 6, 7, and 8. Let's go on. Now we have pickup to 17, measure 17. I'm using a little bit of pedal to catch these notes. I'm catching those notes with my pedal. You don't have to, but I like that little connection between beats 1 and 2. So I'm looking at measure 17, for example, beat 1, beat 1, beat 2. It's like... It's just a nice little gesture, but you don't have to do that. That's totally optional. Here also, I think I like to use pedal to thicken the texture and the color. So the right hand has staccato, okay, but I like the pedal here. I think it sounds nice. So I'm basically ignoring the staccato in the right hand in order to swamp it out with a little bit of pedal. This is pickup to measure 21. In terms of the notes, this part is not as hard. It's a little bit more repetitive. Once you learn measures 21 and 22, you've learned most of the chords in this section. And this is actually where the arrangement starts to get a little bit easier, if only because it starts to repeat itself so much. this little section of music because it's very dramatic. You get this kind of creeping gesture that's interspersed. It's broken up by these octave Bs. It's very cool. It's always been one of my favorite moments in this piece. And I think it's captured here in the arrangement quite nicely. And then at pickup to measure 29, we have a recap of all the original material. So going into measure 29, it's all the same. This is all the same as before. And now I've landed at measure 40, and from measures 29 to measures 40, you have just the same material again, which makes it much easier. However, the ending is hard. The left hand comes up in this pickup to measure 41. That's awkward. I would end on a 3 or something like that rather than a 5. I think that's difficult. All right, let's try this out. So these last two measures, I'm actually going to zoom in on this in my music here. These last two measures are devilishly unpredictable and hard. So what she's done in the last two measures is changed the rhythm and notes that you're expecting. Very, very unpredictable. What you're expecting is, and what she does instead is, I actually do not like this moment in the arrangement. It would have been much easier if it had just been kept the same. Like that. That would have been way better in my opinion. But that's not what she does. She changes it up on you. So you'll notice what I do when I get to this ending is I actually slow down just a tiny bit. Now I can spin this as an interpretative thing. I can say, ooh, I'm just making the ending dramatic. But actually, a big reason for doing that is this is just so hard. I mean, look at that. Landing on a 3 and a 5. Maybe there's an easier way of doing that. Not easily. I can't find a really elegant way of handling this. The only other fingering that you could maybe use would be 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. All right. That's not bad. That works. But it's a little bit unwieldy. But so is the alternative. That is also unwieldy. That is probably harder. Anyway, all of that is to say, this ending is surprisingly difficult. However, my quibbles about the ending notwithstanding, I think this is a pretty solid arrangement. It sounds like the original music. It's charming. It sits pretty well on the piano. It is pretty difficult in a way that's deceptive, in a way that you don't see coming. But if you can get over that difficulty, what you have is a nice little take on Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy. Thanks for listening.